part of the trouble with the mental health system is that they take authority over our inner experience, our subjective experience, and then they tell us what that experience means according to their training. But they can't stop us from figuring out our own meanings internally. And my eyes are kind of squinty because I feel really tired. I had to wake up earlier today than usual. And I'm wondering if we're not bipolar, but we're non-dual. We get in touch with non-dual consciousness. And I don't know much about non-duality. But when the non-dual consciousness comes in, it feels so wonderful, and it goes into magicalness. But then around others who know us, who don't operate that way, we manifest as non-dual in that we manifest as sort of the sum totality of the chaos of that situation. And we act it out. And it's showing that we're not this consistent person, but the medical system insists, no, it's a consistent person suffering from inconsistency. There's a person in there, but there isn't a person in there. But I don't think people want to know this. They really don't. Unless maybe they're spiritual seekers. But that's the thing, people who get diagnosed with a mental illness, they're not spiritual seekers, but they get in contact with that non-dual consciousness because it can contact anyone at any time. One doesn't have to be looking for it or even know anything about it. But then if we don't, then we get tricked in so many different ways. We get tricked by the ego, and so we build a big ego out of it, and then it collapses, and it's really painful. This crisis I just experienced, I haven't felt any depression. I felt low energy, but no subjective me who is experiencing depressed energy. So there's no real mood attached to it. It is the ego self that wants it to be a certain way that creates a mood out of it. And it's also the resistance to the chaos of it. And part of why it manifests as chaos is to see the chaos that's still within, stored in the body. And the body can be kicking and screaming sometimes. And then when one doesn't act out the stuff, one doesn't act out the chaos that wants to be acted out through the body so others can come and capture that person in order to get them to be reinterpreted as a separate self. When one doesn't act it out, then the body experiences pain of those patterns dissolving from the nervous system. So it's possibly a physically painful process. But then when one looks at that without calling it pain, without giving it a word, because if we call it pain, then it is necessarily going to be felt as bad, which is resistance, which is the ego. So if we're experiencing it as an ego, we're not really experiencing it. We're not able to transform it. It's going to be translated into something else. So the ego is the translation and it's going to translate it into my pain, my body, my this, my that, identification. But if one doesn't do that, if the approach is from neutrality, it's just sort of what's happening. When one is with what's happening, one realizes that what's happening changes. It never stays the same. So the ego would want constant pleasure, and then so when there's pain, it resists that. So things are either pleasure or pain. Leaving today, going back home, and I think I feel ready inside. So this was definitely a good decision to come here and be with those lower states of consciousness by myself. Because the thing is, it seems like when others around me know me, who think they know me, are around me, they can sense that energy, and they literally sometimes come up to me and yell at me. And that makes it worse. Whereas if I'm with it by myself, nobody comes up and yells at me, so I can be with the energy in consciousness without it attracting like experiences. And it did do that a little bit, and I think that's why that dog attacked me, and I think that's why the other girl was letting her dog shake on me. It was like those lower states. They try to, when one feels a little bit disturbed, others pick up on the energy, and disturbing things happen. So it's good to be on one's own at that point. It's probably too windy out here to talk. But I'm making my journey back, and I'll try to meet with that guy who's doing the private peer support, and meet with a new friend I made who's doing something cool, and see what's going on. But I also feel like I could get a job. I do have a job, but it's casual, so I could get more work. And I might only be able to go to California from October to December. So we'll see what happens. We're gonna see what happens. See you later, ocean. So I'm back home now, and I'm in an infrared sauna. I'm going to try and do a sauna every day this week that I can. I probably can't on Wednesday or Friday, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And I went to the store and bought some grapefruits because I might try to do 3 days on grapefruits. I'm not sure if it's a good idea because I am taking quetiapine and trazodone, and sometimes grapefruits aren't the best thing to have while having medications, but whatever, I'll try it at least for today and see how I feel tonight when I try to sleep. And then after that, I might try to switch to fruit. We will see, because that would be an experiment. It would be seeing how I do on just fruit. I know somebody who is a fruitarian and they're really active and fit, and I'm just wondering if fruit will have some kind of epigenetic effect and give my brain more energy. I have also read that it's good to not have any sugar, and then that way blood sugar issues don't happen. But I did eat, when I first tried raw food years ago, I did this plan called eco eating through a guy called Sapoti Brook, and it was basically eat 2 pieces of fruit every 2 hours or something, and then have a bit of greens, at least 400 grams of greens, and celery, like 4 celery sticks a day or something. So I could do that too, but I might try to do the fruit, because if I keep my blood sugar up by having fruit consistently, and also fruit is more natural and the body recognizes it and processes it more easily, then maybe my brain will have more energy. So that's kind of what I'm going for, is more consistent brain energy. And I've talked with myself about how I am nature. And if that's true, if I eat things that are of nature, that's more congruent. And the times in the past where I've done pretty much 100% raw food, I've felt the best. And I haven't been doing that for over 2 years. But when I was doing it, I felt really good. And I'm not saying it's the only way, but I'm going to experiment with that. Also, it'll be kind of cleansing. So, before I started talking to myself, before that really scary hospitalization that I had, I took pretty good care of myself. I did things like a 10 series of Rolfing massages, which was really amazing. And I did like 6 sessions of colon hydrotherapy. I think that was in 2015. So 2015 I did that, and or maybe before that. I can't remember when I did the colon hydrotherapy. But I sort of invested a couple $1,000s a year in taking care of my body and cleansing it, and that doesn't even include the food. I was pretty good with the quality of food that I had and did a lot of raw food for quite a long time. And I think that's one way to increase one's vibration. It's not the only way, but for me, the way my brain seems to be working right now is that it's hard to have any kind of contrived motive or pattern. So when I say, oh yeah, I want to do yoga twice a week for the next however, my brain doesn't really work that way. I can't really make some kind of plan like that. Whereas eating, well, I pretty much have to eat unless I did something like a 40-day water fast, which I'm not going to do at this moment. But so eating's not necessarily a pattern, but I can decide to buy fruit at the grocery store as opposed to whatever it is that I would otherwise buy. On the island, I was eating a lot of nut butter and Laura bars sometimes, and carrot sticks and hummus. And I did cook the Indian sauce and lentils and broccoli sometimes. And I enjoy that. But I don't have a kitchen right now. And so I do have a fridge. So eating a fruit diet is congruent with the tools that I have at hand. And so we'll try it. I'm saying that today. I might change tomorrow. And I'm okay with that. Because part of what I'm learning is that it's really hard to create any kind of pattern or routine or habit. I think that might be more possible if I had a place where I was living where I was really comfortable, and then feeling comfortable went out and got maybe a bit more work. Right now it seems really hard to do that though, because today I was in my room until 1. I don't think I was sleeping for the last hour or so, but I went to bed before midnight, probably 11:30, and I didn't get up until 1. So I think these medications, they're helping me sleep, but they're also making me more tired. And I think that's okay for now, because the more I sleep, the less my brain gets speeded up. And then the less it gets sped up, perhaps it is easier to stay grounded in linearity. So for me, it's not about getting things done right now. It's staying grounded in this reality. And I do feel kind of okay being back. I feel a little bit resistant. I don't really like where I'm living. And I think it's because the possibilities that exist there. So when I was on the island, there was no possibility of certain people just coming and deciding to yell at me for no reason. That would be very unlikely. I got a little bit attacked by a dog and a little bit of water shaking off on me by a dog, and that was it. So even though I was in a crisis, there was no real possibility for others to come and harm me in any way. And this includes if I was in a really stressful situation and then I was feeling distress, then the chances of me calling for help would increase, and then the help that I would get isn't really the help that I want. So it's not really help. It's just sort of deciding that I can't do it on my own. It's not really help. It's just going through the process with other beings, and then other beings are doing things that I don't want, like psychiatry or people around me. They sort of get caught in that awful energy, and they end up doing things that they don't necessarily want to do either. Like, who wants to take their family member to the hospital? Nobody. So they end up having to do something that they don't want to do. So by me being able to contain it myself, they don't have to do things they don't want to do either. This sauna isn't really getting hotter than 98 degrees. I've seen it go up to like 130. Well, I'm still sweating a little bit. I just might have to stay in here longer. And, yeah, so that's what I'm considering. And I found before when I would do raw food, people would come up to me and ask me, what are you doing? Like, what, this and that. Whereas, and it's more body focused thing, whereas I think the air conditioning's on and it's making it harder for this thing to heat up. Oh well. So yeah, body focused things as opposed to mind focused things. Like, one could machinate about the mind forever, and that's what I was sort of doing. And I'm wondering if focusing on the body for a while would be good and not really so much on the mind, because I've made metaphors with myself in infinite different ways, and I think through the process of being away for the month, I realized certain things. Like, certain things my brain has been trying to figure out, it sort of came to an understanding of. but without being so afraid of it. Because it's sort of frightening, but not at the same time. Like I went through lots of states of fear, but that which I was afraid of there's no need to fear it. So one can go through the process and look at it with fear, and that creates all sorts of chaos. And then one can go through the process and be neutral, and the process just goes on and kind of completes itself. But since we don't understand the process, it's fearful. So then we ask for help, and then we ask for help, we're called mentally ill. When basically some of the stuff that happens is physically impossible. But then the brain sees that those are possible. And I think what it has to do with partly is operating in a quantum way. So, people talk about this in books, like the book Becoming Supernatural, and there was another book that I quickly browsed when I was away, just quickly, and it talks about quantum. But when people can get into the quantum state and not know what the hell's going on, it is freaking scary, and it creates all kinds of chaos. So I think it's not as much about, well, anything's fine, but I think people who have this happen, who have it happen through awful circumstances, need help in understanding this. Because there's people who are in fine circumstances and their life's going on somewhat fine, but they're suffering and they don't really like how things are going, but they're still somewhat stable and they're able to investigate and try what the books are saying. But then there are people who go into that through trauma. And I think part of how it happens is that if somebody is in a not great situation and they have to get out of it, a larger capacity in the brain has to be activated in order to get that person out of it. So if I'm identified with my body and say my body is incapacitated, or say somebody's unconscious for some reason, my hand is kind of shaking. If I'm unconscious, I can't see through my eyes. But what we are is something greater than our body. So there's the body. Dr. David Hawkins, I think, explains it. The body is experienced through the mind, and the mind is experienced through consciousness, and consciousness is experienced in awareness. And I would say awareness is emptiness, and it's unknown, but it's all knowing. So when one is in danger, awareness knows it, and awareness is aware of the whole situation. So awareness would be able to see the whole room. Awareness would be able to see everything going on around it within its ability. Who knows what that is? And awareness would then be able to, at the right moment, get the body out of there. Not the body getting the body out of there. So if somebody was incapacitated and then all of a sudden they get up and start running at the right moment and get themselves to safety, it wasn't because their eyes could see what to do. Awareness calculates it. And awareness is what collapses the wave function around the possibility of the body surviving. And that might only be one possibility, but there could be multiple possibilities. So what I'm saying is the brain has to go into a state of possibility, and it has to go into a higher energy state in order to ensure the survival of the body. And usually we don't operate in that state. It is possible that one day human beings will operate in that state naturally. Will be trained to operate in that way through education, and also it's possible that we'll be born into that way of operation through the brain operating that way in the parents. But it doesn't even matter about that. It's just a matter of also whether the environment and the human created environment is that which can help facilitate possibility, moving based on possibility and creativity and synchronicity, versus moving based on programmed thought, projections, and following patterns, which is less and less what my brain is able to do. So what I'm saying is, it's sort of a paradox, or an unfortunate thing, that the way we've designed society, we're able to sort of go around sleepwalking and on autopilot. So thought is going on in the brain and the body is on autopilot. We drive the car, we don't even know how we got there because we were in the thinking realm the whole time. So if there's a traumatic situation where the body feels like, oh my God, I have to survive, awareness knows and activates the field of possibility, so that the field of possibility gets the body the hell out of there. And this messes up the brain in many ways because it doesn't know how that happened. One realizes, I didn't get up and get out of there. All of a sudden something was getting me out of there. And so what I'm saying is, wherever the possibility was for that body to survive is what one is now thrust along in as a future path. But not even a future path. One basically had the impossible happen, which is, maybe I'm not this localized entity in a human body, localized in the head. Maybe I'm something more. And I'm not saying people think in that way, but there's an awareness of that. And then when there's an awareness of that, it makes it very challenging after to operate in a reality based on Newtonian things, because when the brain can see what's possible, it sees what's possible when it goes along Newtonian lines again, which is eventual demise. One can feel the future of every possibility in a way, because one had to feel the future of the possibilities in the state of being in a bad situation in order to find the possibility where one survives. But then one also realizes there were many, many possibilities that one didn't survive. And so one becomes aware of multiple realities, parallel worlds. And, that's, I feel, part of why afterwards, if one is traumatized, it leads to a high probability of so-called mental illness. Because one can see and feel possibilities, and if one was living one's life along a certain line, that line died. And now one exists in a realm of possibilities. And there are certain areas of linear reality where one doesn't exist. And it's also possible that it's kind of hard to explain, but it's possible that one's brain starts working in a different way, and if it does, then one has a different function or needs to function in a different way. But part of mental health recovery is trying to get people to function in the old way. And since that led to trauma in a lot of cases, the brain is very resistant to going back to living in that way. One can see the subtle violence because maybe one wasn't aware of the subtle violence, and that's what got one into a traumatic situation. Or, people can be traumatized by the ones that are supposed to love them. So they realize that's not love. And the thing is that when one survives, one kind of realizes in a way that love is that which saved them. Love is the awareness, the bigger field of what we are. And so after the brain gets traumatized by the Newtonian way, it really needs a lot of love in order to be able to flower. And most people aren't given that type of environment. And it's a lot more complicated than that, but I've been on this so-called mental health journey for 7 years now. And the sauna won't go above 96. It's okay. I can stay in for an hour and a half then. But I sort of realized that it was a pretty shitty outcome or possibility to go into, but I realized what other possibilities I survived. And I don't know why. Well, there could be reasons why, for sure. But it's challenging to talk about because it wouldn't make any sense to people. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about it, though I probably have talked about it in my videos all along. But going through this last month, I really realized that a lot of what I said is true. But then the brain actually coming to terms with it. There's a difference between intellectualizing it. I guess what I'm trying to say is all these anomalies that I've experienced, they sort of started to make sense. I was able to see them this last month without being afraid of it. Because the truth is, there's nothing to fear. And part of what we need to learn is how to die and what death is. And death is death of the self. we don't experience death of the body. But the self can die many times in one lifetime of the body. And the thing is, if one went into a quantum brain state, the self is Newtonian. So any movement of the self or of a Newtonian fashion to accumulate, to be better, all this stuff, better as a self, like as this invisible entity that's not there. If we start to build that, that's what has to die. So that's what I'm wondering about, is not building the self. And it's seeming to me that the brain less and less is able to do that. And so the process that I went through this last month, I think it was more of the self dying, and it's painful. The self, when it dies, tries to inflict pain on the body. And part of the reason it does that, it seems, I don't know if this is the reason it does it, or part of the reason it does it, or what happens when we misunderstand what's happening. So I was in pain in my body, and that one day or night when that substance seemed to be released from my heart and it's diffused through my body, and I felt extreme fear for a bit and pain. It only lasted 2 minutes, but if I immediately acted on it and say called for help, that creates the medical system. That creates the medical system out of my misunderstanding of the death of the self. Now, I think in the beginning it's really hard to not create that. It's really hard to not create the medical system out of the death of the self. And then the self also causes physical pain in the body, supposedly. But when I was able to be with that neutrally, it changed and changed from pain to sort of this burning and this release of heat. So I literally think that's sort of the burning up of the self, because the self, the thoughts that are the accumulation of the self, are innervated in all of our nerves and our musculature. So it makes sense that there'd be some kind of release when the self, which is nothing but a bunch of thoughts. So it's not exactly nothing, but it's the thoughts that would puppet our body. So, if I'm in body pain, I would say, oh, I need to go to the doctor and get a pain pill or something. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because I'm still taking some psych meds at night, but I'm wondering about this process of the death of the self. So I'm thinking, once I have a better living situation where that situation doesn't induce resistance, like I don't like what's possibly possible in the situation I live in now. It's just not the right epigenetic matrix. I don't like the way I manifest and gesture. And I can practice changing that for sure, but it's not where I want to be, I don't think. So I'm not going to attempt to come off medication right away, because there'll be a lot that needs to be released because the medication is blocking that. And anything that it blocks accumulates in the body, I think. So cleansing might be one way to get rid of some of that energy. But it's not good that this infrared sauna won't heat up more. I'll see about finding out if I can turn off the air conditioning or something, but I am sweating, just not as much my legs. So yeah, I want to do this fruit thing, possibly. We'll see, because I don't really hold myself to anything. And yeah, I've made notes on some stuff. I don't know, I feel like changing the conversation. To what exactly, I don't know, but yeah, I have to get some practical things done now that I'm back, and yeah, and last night I didn't sleep the greatest. I felt like I was dreaming a lot, and then I just sort of felt like I didn't sleep that much. But since I was in there for 13 hours, I must have slept quite a bit. But it's that feeling that I didn't sleep the greatest. But I guess I did. And it was sort of nice to be in the pitch black room again. I wish, in a way, that I could move out of this whole trying to keep myself alive perspective to being able to share and help more in some way, but I don't even know what way that would be. I don't even really like the concept of help. Because what I've been trying to learn is understanding things for myself, so then I don't need help. Because when I ask for help, people help me in ways that they think are going to help, but they're not necessarily helpful. So it was interesting how I was feeling a lot of sort of anxiety before I left, and then as soon as I got to the island, it went away. And then I felt fine for about 3 weeks, and then I did have a bit of a crisis. But, you know, had I stayed home and that anxiety built up and up and up, it would have been worse. So I think something I learned was being ready to just sort of drop everything and go. And that's, again, the discontinuous part is, you know, it's hard to build up some kind of consistent lifestyle when one has to go away for a month in order to not be hospitalized or something. But it was very mild compared to what it's been before. And usually the tough part can last about 3 months, so I have a ways to go. But you know, if this is still the tough time, it could easily turn into something not good. So I might go away again in August, maybe, just because I'm trying to keep afloat until I go away, if I go away. We'll see. I just opened this book and I went to this page. That's what I was just talking about with myself in the sauna. It says, you said before that people do not actually experience their own death. That is true, blah, 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 blah. The work of Dr. David Hawkins is really, really good. This is part of another thing I was talking about on Dr. David Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery, page 29. He says, he's talking about when one reaches the level of consciousness of love. And he says on page 29, brain neurotransmitters change, beginning with the release of endorphins, which open up millions of banks of neurons that up to this time have been waiting for this energy field to activate them. So that's something I was talking about in different words to imply that a brain changes in its operation from Newtonian to quantum. And that's what he's saying on page 28. He said, this eventually leads to a paradigm jump at consciousness level 500, love. Where reason is linear and objective, love is a different dimension, as it is non-linear and subjective. So, and then he's saying when that love happens, it opens up millions of banks of neurons that were waiting for that energy. So there's an energy that activates these brain cells. And he says scientists are currently researching the whole field of endorphins. Example, oxytocin is associated with concern for others and socialization. And in my videos before, I talked about oxytocin consciousness. I think when that we get to that level, it's a completely different way of operating, but those old ways of operating are still there too sometimes. And we do eventually fall into the old ways of operating again. So this is a really good book. Reading Dr. David Hawkins' work a little bit again makes sense. Here's the other thing that I was talking about. It says people who have near-death occurrences experience those fields over 600, including their own higher self. So, without knowing about his work, it's hard to feel that. But he's saying that, you know, a near-death experience opens up higher states of consciousness. It's amazing right now. I found organic grapefruit. So here goes 3 days on grapefruits. I'm already half a day through. It's going on 2 days of grapefruits only. And I found organic grapefruits at Superstore and they're quite good. and it feels easy. I'm not feeling really that hungry in general. I'm not even eating like 12 grapefruits a day. I think I ate maybe 5 yesterday. And I don't know if the point of the grapefruit thing is to eat more grapefruits, because the grapefruits help to burn off fat and cellulite. I did it years ago, probably like 8 years ago, and I was really thin, and it did get rid of that last bit of cellulite for sure. But I was just doing it to cleanse, and I think it's kind of helping because my eyes feel less tired today. Last night I felt kind of emotional about being back where I'm staying, and just it's not really energetically right for me, and I was sort of feeling kind of blah and laying on the couch watching something, and then at a certain point I just started crying. But I think a lot of this is the self trying to make itself important for continuity. So whatever, it'll burn itself out at some point when it's meant to. So I'm going to do grapefruits until tomorrow at 2, because I started Monday around 2. And then I'm probably going to try switching to fruit. I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not, but whatever, it works. And usually when things are meant to happen, it's effortless. So the grapefruit thing is effortless, whereas if I would have done it at any other period of time, it would have felt like I was pushing myself to do it. And so the effortlessness is good, and I will have grapefruit until tomorrow at 2, and then I bought some organic apples, so maybe I'll switch to apples and then go on from there. I wouldn't mind doing a grape cleanse, because I bought that book, The Grape Cure, but sometimes grapes make me feel a little bit funny, like I eat too many and they give me sort of a cramp in my shoulder. So maybe that's good, maybe they're cleansing, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do a couple weeks on grapes. I think bringing the focus back to cleansing my body is good, and I've done 2 infrared saunas. And last night I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get to sleep, because I tried to get to sleep or go to bed around 10:30 because I had to be up at 7, and I haven't woken up at 7. I don't know when the last time I woke up at 7 was. But even though that day I had woken up at 1, so I go to bed around 10 or 10:30, it hasn't even been 12 hours. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be laying here not able to sleep. But I took all my sleep vitamins and I took my meds and I fell asleep. So I think partly it's the dark room that helps. So I need to focus on the positives of where I'm staying. Like, I have my totally dark room. I find it very cold. It's really cold. And yeah, so the things I need to focus on right now, because my brain is really slow, is getting my car fixed. The air conditioning doesn't work, the windshield is cracked, and the Apple CarPlay is not working very well. And I have a counseling appointment tomorrow, and I need to write something for where I was staying, but my brain's not working the greatest. And then I work Friday, and then I'm supposed to go to family constellation meetup on Saturday. And I kind of like that, but I do think I need to take public transit because parking is so expensive. Last time I paid $25 to park, but it was an event weekend, so I don't know how to find out. Because another time I paid, it was like $7, which is reasonable. So we'll see. Got to go in for work, and you know, I feel better just getting out of the house, being outside. It's a really beautiful day. Yeah. So I messed up. I was supposed to be at work yesterday, and I went today and nobody was there. And so I'm sitting in the park and reading. This morning I took 2 SAM-E as well as 4 uridine, 1,000 milligrams, because the suicidalness is there a little bit. But it's not too bad, but I think those things helped. And I also took 1,000 milligrams of tyrosine. And yeah, I'm reading Dr. David Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery. I think Dr. David Hawkins' work is really, really good. Really helpful. So I'm reading kind of slow, but that's okay. And I might try coffee on Sunday because I do need to write something. And I feel like my brain's not really working. So coffee might give me that energy. And I'm feeling like this inner angst is the ego trying to keep itself there. Like I notice, I think it wants attention. So it would want to create conflict in order to get attention. And then if it does that, then it feels like it's not alone. So being okay with this aloneness. And I made a note in my phone in the calendar about, sometimes I make notes in the calendar if it's sort of time sensitive, because it was after the crisis time, and it says if the crisis wasn't less, then maybe being on quetiapine daily is useless. But it was less. So maybe it's good to be on it daily. I don't know. So I will continue with that, but I wanted to talk to myself about that quickly so then I could erase that note to myself. And I think there will be a time where I won't have to take it, but that is a ways away. Yeah. Look where I am. That means I didn't stick to my raw food. Well, I did do almost 3 days on grapefruit. I was having dinner with my friends last night and I decided to eat. So the last cooked meal I had was Sunday at 10 p.m. So I made it till Wednesday at 6 p.m. So it would have been till 10 p.m. Wednesday. That would have been 3 days since I'd eaten cooked food or food besides grapefruit. And I did want to go till Thursday at 2, but I just got so hungry around the food that I ate it. Now I'm having stuff so full it's falling apart, and spiciness is making me cough. I just feel it's kind of futile right now to try to create any kind of program, and I think that's what I'm struggling with, and I think I need to just go with the flow and not try to do anything. Just do one thing at a time and see what happens. So right now I'm at Mucho Burrito. Maybe I'll play around with this for the next few months. I forget everything. I was coming to Mucho Burrito and I accidentally got on the highway, and I'm in this area a lot. I don't even know where I'm going, like ever. And I got on the highway and then there was traffic. The next exit is far away and it was backed up. So I did a U-turn in one of those U-turn to go the other side of the highway that you're not supposed to go through, but I was like so annoyed because I would have been stuck in traffic for like an hour and I wanted to eat. And this happens because I don't have a sense of direction. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. I don't know what's real. I don't know what the world is. I don't know anything. And it's really challenging to operate that way, but it seems like I know what I need to know in the moments that I need to know it. So I think I really need to surrender. I surrender, universe. Please help me be fed and sleep and be clothed. And other than that, I don't really know what I need. I keep feeling like I need my brain to operate in the way it did before, and I was in the shower today and I did have a bit of like energy and some insight coming in, but it was short-lived. And that's okay. And I figured out what was wrong with the sauna. It was only set to 100 degrees. So I changed the setting and now it gets a lot hotter. And I think it is helping me because after I had the sauna, that's when I sort of had insight again in the shower a little bit. And I had a counseling appointment today, and I think I like this counselor because she was willing to speak my language. For some reason, I got into talking about like parallel worldy type stuff and talking about how it seems like there's this pocket of reality that I don't exist in, and telling her that I sort of had evidence in my phone that there's like this, and I told her different examples, which isn't the whole story, and she was willing to say like, so I can't remember what she said, but something about, so in this world it's blah blah blah, and in the other world, you know, values are different or something like that. But she didn't say like, no, there aren't two different worlds, no, there's no this or that. She was willing to speak that language. So I thought that was cool. And, you know, we talked about other things. We didn't talk that much about that, but just her willingness to speak that way was helpful. Like, it was validating. And it was nice, even though maybe she doesn't understand, you know, or maybe she does. Maybe she understands to some extent that there are worlds based on different energies. And, you know, I'm feeling like there's an energy that kind of saved me. Perhaps I was worth saving somehow, and hopefully we all are. Hopefully we all have elements within ourselves that are worth saving. So, you know, since then it's been a struggle. Excuse me. And, yeah. Lots to talk about. I'm sure I've talked about all this weird stuff before, but now it feels like my brain has kind of integrated it and come to terms with it. And I think the times that I've dissociated and felt like a homeless person is because I am kind of a homeless person in a way. I'm not saying I'm experiencing homelessness, but I think the sensation of feeling homeless is an actual experience of detachment. So I go into this space where I'm really scared and I feel like I'm homeless. I think it's fearing the aloneness. And one would rather, you know, be dragged or brought back to being in relationship with those one is attached to reassume a linear type of reality. That's what everyone else wants. You know, people that are attached to me wouldn't want me to be radically different and, you know, be on the other side of the planet all of a sudden. So, you know, that's where I feel like that other world is sort of competing with the attachment and conditioning. And even, I've gone up the levels of consciousness. Each crisis, it happens that way. Like looking at Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, one goes down to basically zero, like death. And then one transcends the levels, and I've transcended faster this time, but I'm still in a state of a bit of anger and maybe pridefulness. I don't experience it as prideful, but the way he describes it in his book, Healing and Recovery, it is kind of pridefulness. But these are the levels that would want to be attached. Those levels are the levels of which some of my relationships exist. So, how I manifest in those relationships which are at that energy level is how I manifest in those relationships. So, one could work to grow those relationships to a certain level, but, if the others are sort of stuck in a certain level of consciousness, it's going to constantly bring one down to that sort of fear, lower energy, forceful states of consciousness. And people that don't realize this might get stuck in it and think, well, that's how it is. And I can't change other people, but I can sure change my situation and my circumstances. And that's what I did by going to the island, and it really helped to change the flavor. I had a few days of like one event of crisis that sort of trickled into a few days, and my brain functioning, like executive functioning and planning, hasn't come back fully. But it's mostly there, even though I can't find my way around in my own town. So, yeah. I think I just need to release the attachment for things to like linearly get better. Like it's okay to, like right now I'm feeling fine, and I was with a friend before, I was feeling kind of slow, and it's okay to sort of be bounced around by the situation. And I had this email about this thing, and I need to like do this thing to solve this problem, and it's like really annoying, and I feel anger, and I feel like that state of anger sort of attracted that scenario, so I can be mad and I can feel like myself, which isn't true. I'm basically alone. Basically, I think I have these attachments that are going to help me or save me or something, but those attachments are the ones that throw me to the wolves of psychiatry, because they don't know what to do to help me. They just want me to be automatically functioning how they think I should be, and that energy doesn't work. Only unconditional love works. This is a strange world. When I was coming out of my counseling appointment, there was a guy in a truck sitting there, and I know him. He's an acquaintance friend, and he lives in the area, and he just texted me and said, what activities do you like to do? And I said, tennis, because I don't have a tennis buddy, and Craigslist got rid of their personals, so I can't even say, hey, I'm looking for a tennis partner. So he plays tennis. So that's the thing, like, I didn't know how to find someone to play tennis with, but the universe found someone to play tennis with me. He's probably the only other person I know that lives in Abbotsford, that I forgot lived in Abbotsford, because I haven't seen him in a long time. So yeah, all of a sudden I got a tennis buddy, and then I was talking with my mom by text, and I ended up saying some weird stuff about what I've experienced and how I interpret it and stuff, and she didn't really respond too much to it, but it felt more powerful to talk about how I feel about how the world works, and how I feel my brain works, and how I feel my experience, than my feelings as it hurt me. So I was crying a bit, but as I started typing about like the truth of my experience from my own subjective experiential point of view, it's stuff I might tell a psychiatrist and they'll call me mentally ill, but this is how I've interpreted some of these strange events that I've experienced. And, by the way the world works in those strange states, one can intuit how the world can work. And so, just talking about my low functional time and my lower states and, some of the things I've been through. And I typed it by text, so I even told her that I've died many times, and I've died many times so other people don't have to, or, I feel a lot of hurt sometimes because, that way others feel less hurt. Stuff I could read out at some point, but it's just sort of an interesting mix of things that are going on. So I'm going to go to my friend's coffee shop for a little bit. And then I'll go home and sleep, and tomorrow I have to work and, things to get sorted out. And I do want to be ready to leave on a moment's notice in case crap hits the fan, man. It could hit the fan. So, yeah. But then, having some sessions of counseling and then maybe having a tennis partner. I have another friend that I wanted to play tennis with that had an injury, so that won't be happening. So yeah, things maybe aren't as bad. I think conflict a lot of times is just like different worldviews and different paradigms. And one thing that I'm curious about is part of the reason why I feel like I manifest as lower energy states and like really emotional is because I have to go down to that level to meet others. So I'm in pain in a way because I'm not operating in the more energetic and higher levels. So I manifest as this self that's in pain and emotional and self-centered probably, and like poor me and my, first world problem situation. But really, there's another dimension, there's another world where things just go so smoothly and beautifully. And I think right now I'm sort of in both, manifesting a tennis partner out of nowhere, and then, talking and trying to resolve conflict a bit. But I just wonder, if, I don't know why I'm saying, but if others who, maybe because I want people to know, if others who don't operate in those higher energies, do they need to change in order to meet that other? Or maybe they don't need to change. Maybe it's just an understanding or having a communication level of, okay, I understand that you operate in a different way. Doesn't mean somebody else has to operate that way. So, for example, kids who are autistic, parents don't need to become autistic themselves in order to understand that this child has other needs, different needs. They need a lot of love. They need some of the hypersensitivity taken away in terms of too much information sometimes. They need a lot of love and unconditional love and care. Because if an autistic kid, gets upset and throws a tantrum, and if parents were to punish them, they would be like, you're bad, I'm not talking to you. Well, that's not going to work. And it's not going to work with people who their brain also exists in another world. It's a world beyond reward and punishment, and the world of reward and punishment, which is the mainstream, wants to use reward and punishment to get that person to start functioning in terms of reward and punishment. And that's motive. Motivation is based on reward or punishment, to avoid punishment or to move towards some kind of reward. But the brain doesn't work that way anymore in people who have gone into altered states. So if others could understand these other ways of functioning, and that it could be possible that some people are experiencing more pain and agony in the linear world in order so other people don't have to process that as much. So their function could be somewhat of as an absorber, and like a transmuter of the energy sometimes. Maybe those people could be given some regard and, unconditional positive regard, like the principle of wellness recovery action plan facilitator. So yeah, I could work on that myself, but I think reading Dr. David Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery, is helping a little bit, because he talks about telling the truth. And I think the way I had that conversation with my mom through text, it felt more truthful to say the truth of my experiences, no matter how weird they are. But I just hope her reading my weird experiences doesn't warp her brain too much. Because that's the thing, I think a lot of times we as people who get diagnosed with a mental illness don't necessarily get to a position of strength where we can speak from strength about the truth of our experiences, because we're pathologized when we're sharing our experiences at a certain point, and they're being listened to as symptoms of a personal mental illness, when one is really wanting to communicate other possibilities. But we don't necessarily often get to a place of strength where we can do that. And I kind of just experimented with that with my mom. And it changed the flavor of the conversation from like accusing each other to kind of understanding each other. And she says she sort of sees bad things before they happen sometimes. And I told her sometimes I can see who's going to die if I go that way, and I don't want that person to die. So I, go the other way. And then is one like messing with fate? And that's why in a way at some point we get punished through going psychotic. But really we go psychotic to resolve certain energies, and we take on the bad energy and go psychotic so that possibility doesn't unfold. And then it's just like, oh, you had symptoms of an illness, but really we experience like somebody we know dying, and we're like, oh my God, no. And so we take it on ourselves, go crazy, because going from one possibility to another is maddening. And then, other people see us as mentally ill when really we are. It's sort of like that show Touch that I watched, how the dad like does things and connects people so his autistic son won't feel pain. Well, we're like doing stuff and connecting things in consciousness so other people won't feel pain. Possibly, I don't know. It's something quite mysterious, as life is mysterious. So, even being able to speak in that way, and I used to speak in that way to myself a lot, these like empowering possibilities of what's going on, instead of, oh, it's like this personal mental illness, whoa, that sucks. If I realized for real that me going crazy sometimes and losing functionality saved other people's lives, I would be fine with it. And maybe I could take that perspective a little bit. If my body sometimes experiences agony that I need to stay with and transmute, and maybe that helps other people who are in pain, that'd be lovely. And that's what Matt Kahn says when I watched some of his videos, and I thought it was a little hokey that he says, when you're brushing your teeth, say to yourself, you're curing hunger all over the world. Well, why can't one say when I'm experiencing what they call psychosis, I'm healing the world? That would be something along the lines of Matt Kahn's teachings. So, who knows, right? There's so many possibilities, but being able to talk about it in those ways was more powerful. That's one of the things that was coming up in mind. A bit of a struggle when I was on the island was like, man, there's so much I kind of want to tell people, but they don't want to know. And then not saying it is part of what goes into, like, creates the crash. Like, it implodes upon me, on myself, because I'm not fulfilling my function. So then it goes, okay, fine, the energy is going to implode upon you and make you into a not very well functioning ego if you're not going to be functioning with this information that you've learned. And like I said, I used to talk to myself a lot, but the thing is now I don't really have the space. Like before, I had my place, it was noisy, but I had a place where I could write notes and then sit down and talk about them. I had a little process going. Then I was in California, I had a bit of a process going. But since then, I've been not really channeling the insights as much, and I've been more so talking about the supplements I'm taking, and all that stuff is really reinforcing the self. But it's really hard to get into a rhythm of talking about the insights when I don't have like a space to do so. Because you need a notebook. Right now I'm just sitting in my car holding my phone. And I usually just hold my phone now, whereas before I like have a little prop-up stand and talk about things. So maybe it's time to start saying the truth of my subjective experience a lot more. And yeah, I said that stuff in my videos, but then I got away from it a bit. So we'll see, because I feel like now I'm in a bit of a space where like, yeah, I do have some gifts. I don't know what. And it's not really important, but it does feel more powerful than being in sort of a sad consciousness. So we'll see how it goes.